Hi everyone, it's Carrie, and it is time for December stamp class. So, before we get started, I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory about December stamp class because it is called CT's December Tradition Stamp Class. And I know we have some new friends that have joined us within the past few months or past year. So you may not know why this is our tradition. So we're going to talk just for a minute before we get started. So in February, I will have been a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator for 10 years. My 10th stamp anniversary. I think it's the 16th. It's either the 13th or the 16th of February. I'll have to look and make sure. I think it's the 16th. And so when I joined Stampin' Up!, it was celebration, and I just really wanted to get a discount and build up my craft supplies. I love the fact that Stampin' Up! Had the coordination of colors throughout the product line. The designer series paper worked with the cardstock, which worked with the embellishments and the ribbon. I just loved that. And so after a couple of years of using my discount, I had pretty much gotten what I wanted and had built up my inks and my paper, my cardstock, and I actually thought about dropping as a demonstrator. I cannot believe I thought about that. So instead, I went ahead and got what's called a DBWS. It's our Demonstrator Business Services website. I may have that backwards, website services. Anyway, I got my my online store, basically, my website. And I decided to see if, I found some people that wanted to do some stamp classes and that type of thing. And if they did, then I would keep going. Well, that's typically not how that works. I know that now, but I was so fortunate that a couple of people found me and wanted to do a class. And I'm thinking that it's either 6 or 7 years ago now. I'm thinking 7 in January that I will have been doing classes. So I started with 2 people. Within a month or so, I had a 3rd person, and then LaDonna found out I was doing all this behind her back and hadn't included her. And of course, she joined, and Sharon and Dana. And so we just had a really good group, and it just grew from there. So then fast forward a little bit, when the pandemic hit, I was doing most everything in person. I knew that I needed to stretch myself and do some things online, but honestly, I was a little bit scared. And so kind of had to do that when the pandemic hit. So now we have the benefit of doing both in person and online. But going back to my December tradition, early on, as a paper crafter, I realized that I ended up with lots and lots of scraps of cardstock and designer series paper. And I wanted to learn how to use those up. So I'm really thinking that very first year I did classes, we used our scraps in December. And what I find fun is to use our holiday product scraps to make cards that go beyond the holidays. So we are utilizing our supplies, and we're using up that holiday paper. We've been crafting now with the July to December mini catalog products. I've had those in my hands since June, many of them, and we had some Christmas in July. We've made Christmas cards throughout the months, and I've pretty much dwindled down my supply of paper, and so we really are just using scraps to create these projects. So I love that we're not only using up scraps, and I'm teaching you a way that you can use any scraps that you have in your craft room, but also we are extending these holiday products into the new year. So today we're going to be making a winter card, a Valentine, something that would be perfect for spring, and then something even into summer with holiday designer series paper. Love that. So let's take a look. First thing, I am using the Lights Aglow designer series paper, and it's one of the, you'll see it's a surprising way. I think it's this one that we ended up doing a die cut out of, but don't forget that this is just gorgeous paper. It does have cherry cobbler, evening evergreen, soft succulent, and then vanilla and white. Beautiful paper. And so try die cutting from it, because sometimes you'll just get a little bit of the sparkle from the gold foiling in the paper, and you can repurpose it that way. You'll see as we go along. The very first project that we're making uses the gnome paper, so let me get down to it. Remember, it was just darling, and honestly, this could be used year-round. But you'll see that it has those snowflake designs, and I just thought that's going to make a great winter card. And then we had Boughs of Holly, and there's also a paper pack, I think it's called Celebrate Everything. And it's that really thick paper pack that has 48 sheets from the mini catalog, the July to December mini catalog. I'm utilizing that paper a good bit. And then our Valentine card is made with Boughs of Holly, and then a couple of pink patterns from Celebrate Everything. So just think outside the box when you're creating and really look at your papers. And then last but not least, we have the Gingham Cottage. And so, you know, you have lots of different colors. We are actually pulling in the yellow and this pumpkin pie. So I'm thinking that that may be so saffron, the yellow in this. But, you know, this can really work for so many different things. Depending on the pattern, the color, you could, this is the yellow we're using. So, you know, you could make a spring or summer card with it. Let me double check. Yeah, so saffron is the yellow. Okay, so if you signed up for class, if you registered and you have received your packet, you're going to want to grab your packet. And then if you didn't register, you are more than welcome to stick around and watch as I craft, and you can even gather some of the supplies from your stash, and you can create these designs just using different product. No problem there at all. Then I also pulled in the Season of Chic bundle. This is a stamp set I've used some and the dies as well, but I don't know that I've necessarily featured it with y'all. I think we may use this in the spring, maybe for stamp class in March or April time frame. It comes from the annual catalog, but I love it when we get a stamp set that has images and sentiments that will take us through several different seasons, and that's exactly what you have here. Seashells, snowflakes, it's just awesome. And then it has a wonderful die set that coordinates with it as well. I'm also pulling in some hearts from Give It a Whirl. So on classes like this, I usually do pull in some extra things just so that we can really utilize our supplies. Not trying to overwhelm, but just reminding you to look through your dies, look through your paper, look through and use things up. Now I'm going to be using 4 different colors of ink, Pacific Point, Real Red, Polished Pink, and then Granny Apple Green. But if you have anything that's close to these colors, you're going to be able to substitute. Any blue will work. Same thing with the pink, green, or red. You're going to be able to mix and match. So don't stress. Just pull out what you have and use what you have. Okay, now I don't have the embellishments in my package, but just wanted you to see, in case you've not taken a class from me before, each of the projects, we're doing 4 projects. I prep everything, and Dale and I usually work on this together. Your card base, all of your components are in your envelope. So like this is project number 1. And look at all of those goodies. Everything is cut. It's die cut for you. Your card base is scored. And everything's cut for you. So go ahead and pull that Pacific Point card base out. And I will show you the project right quick. So many times when we are cutting things down, especially our 12 by 12 paper, and this is the one we're using, the gnome paper, we end up with long strips that are maybe an inch or inch and a half wide. So I thought, how fun would it be to just take some 1 by 1 inch squares of paper, and we're going to create this cute little card. So in your packet, you've got all these little squares two different designs of snowflakes. You've got 9 of each, so you have options. You could actually pull in another card base and another layer, and you could make a second card if you wanted to, just by adding a few little pieces. A strip of Pool Party cardstock to stamp our sentiment on. And so I did include 9 of each of the squares so you can do your pattern the way that you want to. So let's take a look here. We've got our Pacific Point card base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and we will burnish that on the score line. Now I will say, when we first started with our classes, we had a lot of scraps left over, and throughout the years we have just gotten so good at using up our scraps. So I don't know that this class anymore is something that we just really need, but I still like doing this tradition and bringing in just some ideas for you. And even within this group, if you go back and search throughout the videos, I know last year and possibly even the year before, our December tradition stamp class is in the videos, and you can get even more ideas for using scraps. And if you have a fun idea that's kind of like a go-to for you, you feel free to post that. We would love to see what you do. I'm always looking for new ideas to use up my scraps. So for this one, I think I'm going to do it the exact opposite of the first one. So I'm going to put the lighter snowflakes on either side, where here I've got those darker ones. And like I said, you're going to end up with, and I may even move this around a little bit. There's one that's 2 inches by 1 inch. So you can always just cut those if you need to. And we're just going to make it however we want it. I mean, you could certainly pull these down and you could put your sentiment up there. And I very well may do that. That will work just fine, won't it? Okay, so I'm going to have lots of these pieces left over. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want the lighter color in here. So as you can see, you're going to end up with lots of leftover little bits, 1 by 1 inch squares. So if you grab another piece of basic white, you could even create another project if you want to. And as usual with stamp class, what I do is I post a share thread so that you are able to go in there and you can add your projects that you make, because I know a lot of times you pull in a different stamp set than what I have, and that's one of the things I like about the way that we design our class, is that you don't necessarily have to have the same products that I'm using. I want you to be able to substitute. So we're just going to come in. I kind of like to get it laid out how I want to do my card. And then I'm going to do all 4 corners first. Glue those little pieces down. And then I'll come back in and kind of fill in. But that way it helps me get all my borders. I know what I'm doing. Nope, that's one of those that's long. Let me get a different one. And if you got one of those longer ones, just cut it in half at 1 by 1, right? That's Mr. Oliver you hear running around. I'm not quite sure what he is up to. I like being able to record this video ahead of time for you. since Saturday morning we will be doing an in-person stamp class as well. So if you're local to me, we get to meet together again. Now just do the best you can as far as lining things up. Just eyeballing it. I am not worrying about it, but if you wanted to grab your grid paper, you could certainly do that. If you want to be a little bit more of a perfectionist than what I am. We're just making a fun winter card, but really I hope that this gets your mind going with different papers that you may have that you could use to do this very same thing. So cute. So now I'm going to come in. I've got those glued down, and I'm going to add that next row down here. Just trying to keep my border somewhat even. Isn't it fun the way that it picks up the patterns as you go across there? I think that one's down a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about it. I think that one could move down just a tiny bit, or maybe even, it may not be quite square. I'm going to turn it. Yes, I think that will help. Okay. Just kind of looking at my borders. Pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's okay. Gonna go with that. Okay, let's do a little bit of stamping our sentiment. So I'm going to pull in my Pacific Point ink and my piercing mat. And this is just, I think it's, what, 3 3/4, I believe, by 1 inch strip of Pool Party. And the sentiment's pretty tight on here as far as the length of the sentiment. And that actually looks pretty darn good, y'all. I'm going to set that over on my chamois and put my finger in my ink pad. Not truly stamping until your finger is blue, right? Pull that back and just stuck my finger right in my ink pad. Anybody else ever do that? Okay, so we're going to come in, and I think I want to pop up that piece. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit this time, you guys. We'll see how I do this. We will pop that up with some dimensionals just to give that sentiment a little bit of lift. But certainly, if you want to glue it down, you can. And technically, you could pop up all of those little squares if you wanted to as well. That would be fun. I know a lot of times I say you do you. I heard somebody say you do you, boo-boo. So that's what kind of popped in my head. That's funny, right? Okay. So we're going to add our little sentiment. That does kind of show me that my pieces are a little bit crooked, but it's going to be okay. be okay. Well, that's better. Just work with it till you get it right. I think that's better. Okay. And you make every season even more beautiful. Such a pretty sentiment. Let's go ahead and add this piece to the front of our card. Now again, if you wanted to pop it up, you know I am not going to tell you not to. We're almost done with our little winter card. It's super cute, right? But how fun would this be as a birthday card? There's just so many different possibilities, don't you think? Depending on the paper that you happen to have. Now we do have our snowflake, and this is cut from the red and white glimmer paper that has retired. I think that it's sold out as well, y'all. And I'm just going to take a mini dimensional, and if you don't have any of those, just cut a little piece of dimensional or glue this straight down, whatever you prefer. And I'm trying to decide if I'm going to put it up here, if I'm going to bring it down here. I think I'm going to pop it right up here at the top. And then in your packet, I have included some iridescent rhinestones, a strip of those for you to add your embellishments. You've got plenty, so you're going to be able to sprinkle them on your cards as we go through the class. I think I'm going to use a larger rhinestone. These iridescent rhinestones, oh my goodness. They are just so, they're sparkly, they're beautiful, they're one of my favorite embellishments. They come from the annual catalog. So there, my friends, is card number 1 using our scraps, 1 by 1 inch squares. Super fun, super cute. Possibilities are endless. This would make a great birthday card, congratulations card. Just so many things that you can do with this. But here's our winter card. And let's move on along. Next thing we're going to make is a Valentine. So next one you're going to need is this thick basic white card base. And again, lots of little pieces, so let's take a look right quick and kind of get organized. You've got a skinny strip, 2 pieces that are 5.5 by 2 inch, that's 5.5 by 3/4. And then you've just got these 2 small strips to set aside, and then lots to choose from as far as your reds and pinks. And I'll show you what to do with that in just a minute. Let's fold our card base on the score line, and we've done that for you. Uh-oh, I just realized I may have lost my hearts. I should listen to my own advice, right? We have to be careful when we're taking things out of our packet because we've got little bits. So I may have lost my baby heart in the process. We'll see as we go along. Oh, they're all there. All 3 are there. Okay, I'm going to set them aside up there so I don't lose them. So we've got our card base ready. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring in, if I can find it, there it is. And this may cause a little bit of glare. I'm sorry if it does, but I really like to use this or my silicone craft sheet would be better probably, because then I won't have a glare for y'all. So we're going to take one of these strips. These are exactly the same, 5.5 by 2 inches, and we are going to start placing these little bits and pieces, pinks and reds, we're going to decide where we want things. So you've got some that are kind of chunky 1-inch strips. You've got some super skinny strips. You've got some pink. You've got some red. Different patterns. And yours may look a little bit different than mine. And that's okay. So just line them up how you like them. I guess I could show you the project, right? Here we go. This is our card, our Valentine card. So this is what we're creating right now, is this little background piece. That's where our hearts go. Now you are certainly going to be able to stamp right up here as well. That's where those strips go. So super, super fun way to use up small pieces of designer series paper. And we all have those as well. Or you may even have a 12-inch by 1-inch piece. So this is a fun way to utilize those pieces up. Just cutting them down. So I'm just working with my patterns here, and I want to see how I'm going to lay this out. I don't think that one will work. That's more of a square. So just utilizing our strips of paper. And I want to kind of probably come in here and divide out those reds. And you should have plenty to go all the way across, because that's what we're going to do. Just making sure that that's what I'm going to have. And then we can cut off any excess. Okay, so now I've kind of got them laid out. Move them up a little bit. And we'll start adhering. So it's really up to you what you want to use as far as your adhesive. I'm grabbing some Stampin' Seal Plus, and I'm just going to put that all over my rectangle. I think that'll be easier. Liquid glue will work as well. That's just going to make it super, super easy. So my first piece that I want to put on, I'm going to butt it all the way to the end. And then make sure that that's lined up. Went over just a tiny bit. And if you do, that's okay. We can always trim it. We're going to be trimming the sides off. And then I'm just going to continue stacking these pieces on with all the different patterns in the pinks and the reds. How fun. And again, a lot of this paper comes from that paper pack that was Celebrate Everything. Stampin' Up! Has started doing that pretty much in each catalog. You've got a package of paper that's like 48 sheets. So it is awesome if you love to make duplicate cards, because you get 4 of each of the patterns of paper. So fun. And it gives you a chance, like if you love to scrapbook, it's great for that. Okay, I think I still have one more red. I'm using the back side, not the poinsettia side, or at least that's what I hope I did. Dale ran to the store for me. It sounds like he has made it home. I'm really quite surprised that Oliver did not bark. Good job. Okay, so you should have plenty of scraps. So now you've got your piece that looks like this. And you can trim it off with your snips. What I find is bringing in my paper trimmer works really well. And I can just cut down that side and get those little bits off. I don't want to cut the actual cardstock. I can just get those little bits off and come really close in. It's not so much of an issue on the sides, but you definitely, or on the top and bottom, but you want your sides to be flush. Okay. I missed that one. So we just want to make sure that these two sides are perfect perfectly lined up. And then the other is it's gonna work itself out. Okay, let me get these little scraps thrown in the trash and out of the way. So I may need to use my silicone craft sheet again. Sorry guys, give me just a second. Get rid of all these little bits. They're sticking to my silicone craft sheet. All those tiny slivers of paper. But isn't that fun and just very rewarding to use up paper? And what's funny is, you know that there's poinsettia paper on the back, but nobody else is going to know that, right? And I wonder, did I put the wrong side? No, that's okay. So now what we're going to do is bring our card base back in. And you have a piece. You're going to put this piece on fairly close to the bottom. Then you're going to take your 3/4 inch piece and you're going to cover it. So we're going to actually put dimensionals on this piece and also this piece. Or I get to thinking sometimes it may be easier if our dimensionals are actually on our card base and we bring that paper to the card base. So let's try that. Sometimes I get some great ideas. So I'm actually going to cut in on my bones of my dimensionals and use those nice long pieces. You may also have our adhesive strips. That would work really well too. Oop, I said I was going to put it on here. And then I can just come in with a dimensional or two on the end. That's going to work out great. Perfect. And that will also kind of help guide me as to where I want to put this. So we're going to go ahead and glue that straight down to our card base, our little strip with all our beautiful colored designer series paper that we just created. Well, that was good that I dropped that and turned it up like that. Peanut butter side up is what I would say, right? Or glue side up versus glue side down. That could have been quite a tragedy. So I just want to make sure that I have this lined up and that that piece is going to be able to go over, and it looks like that looks pretty good, guys. Pretty good and straight. It's pretty forgiving though, because we are going to cover this piece up. So that's why top and bottom doesn't really matter. You just want your sides to be nice and clean and straight. Now let's go ahead and grab another piece of our dimensional edges, or I like to call them bones. I learned that from my friend Rick, and that just cracked me up. So now I call them bones as well. Again, gonna put that right up to the edge. Maybe just snap that little piece off. And same thing on this edge. Looking right, that was pretty close, pretty good. Still finding little bits of paper. And then we'll take another little piece of bones, or a long piece of bones, and run that across here. Let's see, do we have one more? So as you can see, would it be much easier with those adhesive strips? Yes, it would, but this works too, or you can just use your dimensionals. Either way, you want to make sure that you're generous with them though, because you want to make sure that it's completely adhered. Let's just pull all these backings off. And so if you want to do your stamping on your layer versus your little heart like I did, so if that's what you want to do, let me find my sample to share with you. Because I stamped on my heart, but you could certainly stamp, depending on the stamp that you have, you could stamp onto that layer. You just would want to do that before you apply it to your card. I'm just going to turn it upside down because I want to get my edges lined up, my top lined up, and pop that piece on. Super simple. And then same thing down here at the bottom. We'll remove those backings. And we've got this piece that's 3/4 of an inch by 5.5. And I just seem to line that up better when I'm holding it up. I'm not sure why. And get it flush with the side and the bottom. And just pop that piece on. Pretty good. So again, whatever paper you have, you can utilize that. Use up those scraps, right? We're going to go ahead and stamp. Did I just lose my baby heart? I may have. Up there it is again. I am going to lose that one. So let's do some stamping. And this time, you could bring in your pinks, of course, but I'm going to use real red ink. And this little bitty stamp. Oh, I didn't do a good job of stamping. Okay. We're just going to move forward, and I'll cut myself another heart here in just a minute to fix that. So do a better job stamping than I did. We're just going to add that. Did I stamp that on the back? No, of course not. We'll go ahead and put it together, and then I'll cut myself another little heart. So be sure that you use good pressure. I should have used my mat. I know that. I know better, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and add these little hearts on. And you can pop them up if you want to. But I'm just going to use my liquid glue. And these cute little stitched hearts, there's 3 in the Give It a Whirl dies. And I think it was on my Facebook Live the other day, I said, I am going to be better about utilizing those dies in the new year. Now, you've still got your 2 little strips, your skinny strips of Designer Series paper. And these are to come across, and again, just be sure you don't have the piece that has the poinsettias on it. You have the other side, and they may be a little bit long, so just justify them over, and you can always snip off the end. I think they're about 6 inches long, and our card is 5.5. So just leave yourself a little bit of room without adhesive. Just a little bit of liquid glue going down that strip is going to work. So we'll pop that on the bottom. I think it's cute, but when you add that strip of red, just really brings it all together, don't you think? We'll do that same thing again. A little bit of glue. I just won't go all the way to the end. And we'll put this strip up at the top. Uh-oh. Cut that one too short, didn't I? Well, darn. Okay, well, I'm going to work on this card in just a minute, and I'll get it finished up. Let me go ahead and bring in my actual sample that's going to look like what yours will look like when you get done, right? Yours will be super cute, just like this one. And hopefully I didn't cut your piece too short. If I did, let me know, because I still have some of this paper. We'll just pretend my other heart's on there, this is on there, but this is what this card looks like. And of course, you could come in, and I think we should add a couple of rhinestones on the heart too, right? Don't know if that camera will pick that up, but you do have rhinestones on that heart. Okay, let's work on our next project. Best laid plans, y'all, sometimes. Oh goodness, sometimes. Okay, and again, making sure we get all the little pieces out of our envelope. And this time we have an evening evergreen card base. I love this shade of green. It's one of my absolute favorites. And we have lots of greens in our product line. Okay, let me share the sample with you before we get started. This one pulls in the Fitting Florets Designer Series paper. Again, it is a super, super simple layout that we're using. And I'm making sure that I find all my pieces, because there's a tiny little leaf, and there it is. So you've got a flower, you've got a leaf punched from Designer Series paper, then you've got 4 strips of the Fitting Floret paper, and we're just going to stamp that sentiment. So I think what we'll do is stamp that first, but let's put our inside panel in right quick. I've got 2 pieces of basic white that are 5 1/4 by 4, so it doesn't matter either one of those for the inside. Now you can always pull your scraps to the inside of your projects as well. And I know that many of you are awesome about using scrap strips on your envelopes. No naked envelopes, right? All right, let's go ahead and bring in our polished pink ink pad this time. And then we have a thanks sentiment. Because this is photopolymer, I need to be using my piercing mat. I won't make that mistake again. And let me get this ink pad opened up, and we'll stamp our thanks sentiment. So cute. And something I like to do when I'm stamping up at the top like that is I'll stamp it upside down. Especially when I'm on camera, it's just easier to get my placement. And we'll see how I did. This is a pretty forgiving font. Looks pretty good. We're gonna go with it. We're gonna roll with it. I'll put that over on my chamois. So now it's just a matter of putting this card together. Now, what I did was I cut a 1-inch strip, a 3/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, and a 1/4 inch. You do what you like though when you're putting this together. Again, I would recommend kind of getting your placement where you want to put your strips, how far apart you want them to be. But what a cute and super quick project this is, right? Super quick. So we will just put a little bit of liquid glue here on this first strip. And then we'll come in with this next one. And I just used a 6-inch piece just to really make it easy for the prep. Of class. And you can cut off your excess. So this is a great way to utilize those strips of paper. I don't know about you, but I end up with a lot of them. A lot of little strips. And then last but not least is this piece. And I may have messed up my spacing just a tiny bit. It's going to be okay. And every card is a little bit different, so this one may not turn out exactly like my sample, but that is okay. Yeah, my spacing's off just a little bit, but I am not going to worry about it, y'all. So we are using up our scraps and making a cute thank you card. Now this is not actually from the holiday catalog, but it was that offering that we had. It's actually still available as far as I know. And it's really pretty paper. Okay, let's come in now. You can again use your trimmer if you want to, or you can use your paper snips. I think for this it may just be easier to snip off these little pieces. But whatever works for you is fine. Oops. I don't want to cut into my cardstock. I don't want to do that. Right? Just trimming off a little bit of edges. My eyes are playing tricks on me. Get that trimmed off. Might should have used my paper trimmer. It really is a super quick and easy way to do it. Okay, I think I've got that pretty good. That looks pretty good. All right, let's just swipe away all these little bits. Oop, not my flower though. And I'll get these over to my little trash bin. Little refuse bin. Now we're ready to add, whoop, not quite ready. I didn't trim this guy off. So in this quick and cute, I love this card. Just makes me happy. Okay. I hope I left enough room for my flower, but I'm going to make it work, y'all. I may not use my leaf. We'll see. That's going to overlap just a little bit. I'm fine with that. And it looks like I need just a tiny tad of glue right here to tack that down. And then we'll go ahead and come in and put this on our card base. I think putting that on an evening evergreen card base I could have trimmed that just a little bit more. I'll see if I can fix it in a minute. I think that just really makes it all pop and come together. So this flower is going to be just a little bit further down, but that's all right with me. And before I glue this leaf down, I'm going to take my bone folder and just kind of curl it up just a tiny bit. And I will grab a glue dot. I think that would be a perfect adhesive to hold this little leaf on. I'll put it right about there. And then we will also use our bone folder to kind of curl the petals of the flower up just a tiny bit. Now, if you're mailing this card, that may affect your dimension, but it's still fun to kind of break those fibers and have that kind of lift up a little bit, if you can. We will come in with a dimensional and just pop our little flower on to finish up this card. So again, a little bit different placement this time, but still super, super cute. I think that turned out great. I'm going to trim that little piece in just a minute. So that's card number 3, using up our scraps. And I have one more idea for you. And this one, I love this summertime card made with the Lights Aglow Designer Series paper. That's where our little butterfly came from, and look how shiny and cute he is. Then we also have the Gingham Cottage, that yellow and orange, the So Saffron and Pumpkin Pie, and I'm pretty sure that little green strip that it comes from the Celebrate Everything. So I do not use Granny Apple Green very often, but how fun is it to create a card with Granny Apple Green? Go ahead and grab your supplies. And again, lots of little pieces. You're going to have a butterfly that's going to try to fly away, so be sure to find it, set it aside, and all your little strips. Oops, I think I have an extra. Oh, maybe not. We've got all our little strips. We'll set those aside. And we'll work on our frame in just a minute. Let's go ahead and fold the card base on the score line. My standard 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 4 1/4. And it looks like my trimmer kind of roughed up the bottom there where on the cut edge. So that's a trick that I learned. You can actually use your bone folder to kind of soften that a bit as well. We will glue this to the inside. And again, if you happen to have some of this DSP, you could certainly add those little pieces to the inside too. Little strips. Could put another butterfly. So those are the Build a Butterfly dies from the annual catalog. So like I said, really pulling in a lot of product and utilizing my dies with this holiday paper. Okay, next thing we're going to want to do is find our frame. This is just a piece of basic white cardstock, cut at 5 1/4 by 4, like our regular layer on the front. But we have cut a square using the Stylish Shapes dies. What I love about these dies is it gives you the stitching on the outside where it was cut from and on the inside. Now it's not going to matter on the piece that we die cut. Not going to matter this time that has stitching, but I love that it has stitching around it as well. Just adds that extra little touch and makes it even more interesting. So let's grab our piercing mat one last time. And let me grab my stamp and my Granny Apple Green ink. And we can go ahead, stamp our sentiment. Using that piercing mat makes such a difference. Super cute. So I don't stamp with Granny Apple Green very often, but I have to admit that is really cute. If you don't have Granny Apple Green in your collection, just use a different green. As you can see, you've got your So Saffron, you've got pink, so you've got options. Now, this is going to layer, and it's actually going to be popped up over this frame that is covered. So let's set all of this aside. Let's bring in the silicone craft sheet again. And again, we're using our strips, and we're going to cover this square with strips of paper. And that's how we're going to make that piece that is kind of our little window. So again, I'll pull in some Stampin' Seal Plus and just cover this square with it. Especially want to make sure I get the sides, the edges. That will just make it so much easier to put my strips on. So just kind of decide how you want yours to look. I've got all different scraps in your packet, so you may again have something different than what I have, and that is just fine. Again, just butting those up to the piece beside it. And I didn't do the best job of that. Let me try to lift that up and move it down just a tiny bit. And just building that across there. I've got some skinny strips, some wider strips. And if you bring it more to the edge, you're going to be able to get more out of each strip as well, because you can trim those off and then you'll be able to use them further down. Actually, we'll go with this one. So I hope that makes sense. If you come closer to the edge of the strip to add it, then you will be able to utilize the other end of your scrap. So like I'll be able to cut this off and use it towards the end if I need to. Let's see what else I have available to me here. Just completely covering this square. And then we're going to trim it down a little bit. But we don't have to necessarily, we don't want to necessarily trim it all the way. I'm going to trim it all the way down. I'm going to have to scavenge a couple pieces off. To finish completely covering it. Okay, let me find my snips right quick. Trim those off. And I really kind of need an orange piece down here that will finish this end off. And let me see what I can find for this other side. I hate to use another piece of green, but I don't think that piece of yellow is going to quite make it. No. It's okay. So now we're going to trim it, but we don't have to go, and you actually don't want to go all the way to the square, because you want to have a little bit of excess behind that window. So I'm not trimming super close to that square. And then we can see if we need to do more in just a minute. I know it looks kind of sloppy, but you're going to find that it doesn't really matter, because we are going to put that behind the window, and when we pop it up, it's going to be covered up. So let me get some of these little bits out of the way. Some of this debris. And what I did was actually took a pin and I lined up my frame without adhering it down. Just kind of figured out where I wanted it. Came into the corners and drew my square. So that way I know where to put some adhesive again. To put my square on. I do think I'm going to trim that just a tiny bit more on this side. I think we're ready to put this on. So you can see, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because we're covering all of that up. Isn't that going to be cute? I love that. So now, of course, we want to grab some more dimensionals. And I've lost mine. There they are. And we'll put those in each corner. I think I'll put one right up here. Again, you don't want to scrimp with your dimensionals, because especially if you're going to mail this card, the post office does not realize that they need to be careful with our handmade cards, y'all. And it's going to run through that machine. So you want to make sure that it's going to be able to withstand such abuse. So lots of dimensionals. Give it some strength. You may even want to use those strips again. Okay. And I think I've got one more or two more here on my hand that we'll utilize. Alrighty. Take all those backings off. I do have my take your pick tool right there I could use. That would be smart, wouldn't it? That is such a good trick to pop those dimensional backs off. I hope that you've enjoyed these ideas on how to use your scraps. And I always look forward to you sharing the projects that you make on the share thread. That's one of the fun things, since many of you are using a different stamp set than what I am. Just gives us even more ideas. So look at there. You would never know that I have scraps, that I use scraps to do that. Now we're going to pull in our cute little butterfly, and we will even maybe use a couple of mini dimensionals on the back of it. Sorry, Oliver's been outside barking like a maniac. And Dale just let him back in. You're okay, baby. And we are going to add this cute Lights Aglow butterfly right here. And then, of course, it would not be complete without pulling in some of those beautiful rhinestones. And get my debris off my table. I think we'll use a couple. We'll put a large one. And we'll get a small one down here to go up here as well. Now, I would not be opposed to adding even more rhinestones than that, but look at how cute. Isn't that a sweet little card? And we are using paper that was intended to be fall and Christmas to create a really fun summertime card. So let me pull in a sample of each of the cards that we've created this morning. Let me get the one for Valentine's that's actually completed. And that will finish up our class for today. I hope that this has been something that inspires you to use up your scraps and utilize all those little bits of paper that we have. Don't forget that if you have strips of cardstock, you can always run them through an embossing folder. I mean, you could utilize those as well. You could stamp images and cut it apart. Just so many options. So like I said, I'll put up a share thread. Can't wait to see what your cards look like, what spin you put on them from class. But even if you didn't register for class and you create something, share it with us. We love to be inspired by those that are being creative. So even if it's a sewing project, a woodworking project, whatever you have been working on, feel free to put that in that share thread so we can be inspired. All right, thanks so much. Talk to you soon.